Another episode of Backmarker Battle. I'm your host, Colby Evans, also the host of the ARCA Racing podcast. I'll address the situation right out of the gate. This is not my normal area where we do my show. Unfortunately, my dad's office is being used right now for dad because he's doing payroll. So we are doing this from my room. Yes, for the first time ever, I am doing a podcast live from my room. This is my personal room. And as you can see, I have a slight problem with collecting, just a slight problem. But yeah, hope you guys don't mind it. All the cuts you see, I got my TV right in front of me. It's muted. So if you guys see some screen cuts, that's just the TV. But like I said, welcome to Backmarker Battles, guys. We had a very fun weekend at Fontana with two great racing, despite some crazy weather on the west side of the country. We had some amazing racing. The backmarkers, I will say, though, struggled in both races. We didn't really see a lot of backmarkers running up front. We saw some spurts of them running up front, but at the same time, a track like Fontana, I can understand, because a track like Fontana, you really got to nail the setup, and you really have to have a good handling car with how much the tires, will give up quickly through the run. So it wasn't shocking to see some backmarkers struggle through the race. We'll be reviewing Fontana and be previewing this weekend's action at Las Vegas. But you guys know the drill. Like and subscribe to the channel. Forgot to do this earlier. Like and subscribe to the channel. You guys know the drill. We're at 974 subs, 26 away from the big 1,000. Thank you so much, guys. We are so close to the big 1,000. So, yeah, only 26 subscribers away. We'll have a huge giveaway. So let's get to that goal. Let's get right into it, shall we? So Fontana. Snowy, rainy, sunshine. Crazy weather was the best way to describe the weekend. I thought that both races were good. Fontana rarely disappoints with its races. I actually thought the Cup race was better. I thought the Cup race was actually a lot better than the Xfinity race. Even though it was great to see a Fontana race happening at night. Again, that is something we haven't seen in a long time, where the Fontana race is actually happening at night. It did suck for all those years. You think, you go back and watch those old Cup races from Fontana at night, you wonder why they got rid of that. I really wish they hadn't got rid of that. And I wish also for the last Fontana race, you would use the lights, because imagine those Cup cars at Fontana at night. That would have been a good show. Really, really good show. Looking at the results of the race, the Pala Casino 400, we'll start off with the Cup race, and technically it happened first because the Xfinity race happened later that night. And, looking through the field, really the highest, backmarker team, but at the end of the day, you can't really call them a backmarker team as much as you'd classify them as an underdog. There's a difference between being a backmarker, where you're going to run at the back of the field, and be an underdog car, where, sometimes that underdog team can get good runs and maybe even a win. And that's the case with the 47 team. They just won the Daytona 500 a couple weeks ago. The highest finishing backmarker, underdog, whatever you want to call it, was 12th with Ricky Stenhouse. And then we had Todd Gilliland, who actually had some exciting news. We'll get to that in a second. Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell finished 17th and 18th. And that was really it for the top 20. That was really it for the top 20 in terms of underdog runs. Kind of the usual underdogs and backmarkers we see in the Cup Series every week. The 15, of course, the 15 Rick Ware entry, the 51 Rick Ware entry, and the 78 Live Fast entry. But I will shockingly say is the 15 and the 78 showed very, very solid speed. And I will easily say that what we saw this past weekend was the most speed I have ever seen BJ McLeod get out of a Cup car. From his days at Rick Ware to his early days of his Cup team to this year. I hope this is a sign of things to come. Because as we know, last year, I talked to BJ at Kansas last year. They were the only Cup team running an in-house engine program. Every other team had, I believe they would call it leased motors. So that would explain why maybe BJ's Fords were a lot slower than even the Rick Ware Fords. But it's easily noticeable, even in race 2, that the 78 car was running very, very competitive lap times. There were times throughout this race at Auto Club that BJ was running top 25, top 20. At some point, BJ was running top 20 capable lap times. I just think he's still in conserve mode. If BJ had the resources and the money to run all out every single week, there's no doubt in my mind that BJ could easily probably get into the top 25, top 20. But what we saw this weekend out of the 78 of BJ is something that I'm excited to see. He was actually faster than the 15 most of the day. He was way faster than the 51, faster than the 77, and that is exactly what that team needs. Exactly what that team needs for in terms of speed. And yeah, you're right. I mean, they're already kind of getting me in the comments section. Corey LaJoie running 14th. How could I forget that? Yeah, I hope this is also a sign of things to come. We do have a little bit of a talk to. We're going to talk about Spire in a little bit because I'm really getting frustrated with the 77 car. But I just still want to focus on the 15 and the 78 for one more second. Yaley, of course, as we saw even back in the Gen 6 days, Yaley always manages to get the most out of those Rick Ware cars, whether it be in the Gen 6 car or the next gen. He always seems to get the most out of that car, and that showed again. But like I said, both the 78 and the 15 were running very competitive lap times and on pace. It's not like they were getting caught every 10 laps like they were. On pace, they only went one lap down the entire race. Very impressive efforts by those organizations. The 51, however, Cody Ware had a rough race. I wasn't sure if they had an engine issue or Cody just wasn't shifting as much as the other guys, but the 51 was just so slow, and it was so odd because it's like the 15 and the 51 are coming out of the exact same shop, and yet the 15 was at some points 2 seconds a lap faster than the 51. I mean, by the end of lap 1 on the restarts, you saw it at the back of the screen, the 51 would already be, a half a second to a second already behind the car in front of him? I mean, the 51 could basically do nothing. Somebody actually uploaded his full race onboard. If you want to go watch it on YouTube, you can easily find it. And you can just hear it's like the car's just got nothing in it. The car has got nothing in it. He said it was ill handling. He complained of tight issues throughout the whole day. So it was possible that they were struggling. But man, the 51, somehow with all the action that happened, they still salvaged a semi-decent 27th place finish. So yeah, pretty decent day, you could say, for Rick Ware. The 15 showed good speed. 51 got to the finish. We'll just go with that. They got to the finish. The 78, great speed. Some people don't qualify. 24th as a good run. For that organization and the organization's speed, I give 24th a great run for Live Fast Motorsports. So then we move, like I said, we were going to talk about Spire Motorsports. Corey LaJoie, what did he run in the top 15 the entire race? This guy deserves a better ride. I love Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie's got such an underrated fan base, is what I would say. He's got a lot more fans than people really think he does. And he's been in the sport a long time. He really knows how to drive these lower tier cars and get the most out of them. The same, though, cannot be said for his teammate Ty Dillon. And this has been my problem with Spire Motorsports for a long time. A lot of people will point out to me that the 77 team helps the 7 stay funded. I can understand it from that point. From a financial standpoint, I can understand why the 77 is there. But you look at the results from 2021, 2022, the 77 has just done nothing. Outside of plate tracks, the 77 has been a useless car to put on track. It runs with the Rick Ware cars. It's usually, I call them the stragglers, the cars that don't qualify, practice, or hardly finish higher than 30th. And that's what we saw a lot out of the 77 car, whether it was like Justin Haley driving it or someone else like Balicki and Castle. And that's not based on their talents. That's just based on all the car has in it. Now, I don't think Ty is all that bad, but man, it's just 2 races this year. Early engine failure in the 500, and even before the engine failure and the crash again this weekend at Fontana, the 77 was just running like crap. I mean, he was running 35th. He was just ahead of Cody Ware. He was behind the 14. He was behind the 78. He was behind the 15, and not just by, a couple hundredths. I mean, it was by a couple of tenths. At some points, even a second. At some point in the race, the 77 was over a second a lap slower than the 78 and the 15, and a second and a half to 2 seconds slower than his teammate. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. Is it Ty? Is it the car? What is it? And at this point, even if it financially helps, I mean, what are these charters going for now? What, well over $30 million? You can't tell me they can't sell their charter, bank the $30 million, and put that into their 7 team or start a truck team to go alongside of it. Because I think that would be the better route for Spire to go. Go a full-time truck team, since they already have the resources for trucks, and then focus on one cup car. We've seen what Corey can do. If you put that $30 million, if you put most of that into that cup team, I feel like it's only going to improve the results. I feel like the one thing that's really holding Spire Motorsports back is actually running a second car. Because if this is a sign of things to come, that 77 is going to do, well, dog-s this year. It's not going to do anything. Now, the 77 did fail to finish due to, like I said, yet another engine issue. They are not the lowest car in full season points, however. Looking at the owner points post-California, and this is where some interesting talk will come in as well. The lowest car in owner points right now is actually the 45 2311 entry. It's kind of funny how coming out of Daytona, the 67, the open car, was actually the highest 2311 entry in points. But yeah, the 77 Spire car, I mean, they're all the way down in 39th. They've scored a measable 7 points in the first 2 races of the season. And, we talked about the top 33 charter battle, and I don't know if anyone in the chat can help with this. We've seen multiple reports of the fact that Rick Ware did switch points with the 15 and 51 cars from the previous season, which would then make the 51 responsible to get them inside the top 33 this year. We've also seen some people say that they did not switch points. I don't know which way it's going, and for the sake, I hope they did not switch points, because right now, with the 15 getting a top 10 finish in the Daytona 500 and a solid finish this past weekend at Auto Club, the 15 is doing its job right now, staying ahead. And technically right now, if you look at the owner points realistically of how these cars will run throughout the season, and some people are saying it did happen, and I feel like that is a bad idea, because right now the 15 car is doing very, very well in the points. The 15 car is still in the top 20. I mean, it's currently 16th in points right now, with a huge gap over the cars that it would normally race every week. The 15 is 8 points ahead of its teammate, the 51, 21 points ahead of the 78, and over 34 points ahead of the 77. And with where those teams usually run with each other every single week, I would say that gap's nearly impossible for the 77 to catch up, or it might take most of the season to catch up. So if they have swapped points, that could really come back to bite Rick Ware, because right now, even though also the 51 is ahead of the 78 and the 77, the cars it needs to be in front of, it's still behind the 15. And even though it's only 8 points behind, I mean, you look how close the Rick Ware cars run every week. An 8-point swing could take 8 races to pass. So we don't know. Some people are saying that they did switch points. Some people are saying that they didn't switch points. But if they did, I can say confidently, I don't think that was the right call. Looking back on it, that was not the right call, especially with how much the 51 struggled at Fontana. If they struggle like that again this weekend at Vegas, that gap is going to quickly go away. We know how good Yaley is in the 15. We know Todd Gilliland will be in that 15 sooner or later too. So that 15 car is going to get some really good drivers and runs in it this year, whereas I feel like the 51 is just going to continue to struggle. And like I said, I'm curious to see how much speed we'll see out of the 78. I mean, we saw great speed of them out of Fontana, and I hope that can continue this weekend as well. As for the 77, I just don't expect anything at this point. People are making jokes about tying the 42 last year, and unfortunately, even though we're only 2 races into this year, I unfortunately have to agree. Agree with that. Kind of embarrassing how he's doing in that car when his teammate is literally running inside the top 15 with these higher budgeted organizations. So that was the Cup race. Now we move on to the race that happened later that night, the Xfinity race. And of course, the Xfinity Series at night at Fontana. Just a recipe for a great show. And it's exactly what we got. Great racing overall. Unfortunately, we did have to send 2 cars home. And I really feel for these 2 organizations. 74, CHK Racing, Mike Harmon's team, with new partners, some more funding, Ryan Vargas, some more sponsorship, well more funding. We'll just say they have more funding than they do last year. That's for sure. Unfortunately, they couldn't get through Tech at Daytona in time for their qualifying run. That's why they were sent home. And, this week we never even got to see what they had. Obviously practice and qualifying were immediately washed out because of just the horrible weather. And same with the 99. Due to the owner points from last year, the 99, again, was going home. And it sucks for Garrett Smithley because, we praise Garrett on this podcast for being able to get the most out of the BJ McLeod equipment. He's just got to make the race first. And that's been the biggest problem for BJ McLeod's Xfinity team over the last couple years. As we've seen, BJ's equipment and Xfinity not getting any better and, if anything, getting worse. So it'll be interesting to see what those teams can do at Las Vegas. I think if qualifying does happen, which the weather is looking more than fine for, I think those teams will be okay, but we'll get to that in our Las Vegas preview. But we had to send those two cars home. 38 started. Not much action in terms of crashes out. Like, we did have quite a few crashes and spinouts during the race, but only one car actually failed to finish this race, and that was the 0-8 of Gray Gaulding, which I hate it for Gray. Hate it for Gray because, the magic of the 0-8 team that they had together back in 2019, I feel like is still there. Not really sure why they're running Fords if they're back to a Chevrolet organization team, if they just have Fords left over from last year. I don't know what, but kind of sucks to see that happen to Gray because you don't want to see that happen this early into the season. CJ McLaughlin, I've been critical on CJ for so many years now. He's been given all these good rides, and he's just so slow. At least in an RSS car last year, he was competent. He wasn't slow way off the pace. But you put him in an EG car, Emmeline Gase car, which not the best equipment to start with, and he was just like the 51 car in the Cup race. He couldn't hang on to the lead pack, and he was just basically running by himself the entire race and did nothing. Did nothing the entire race. It's like he didn't even need to be out there, almost. David Starr, our motorsports team, I thought they would run a little bit better than where they finished 35th. It's definitely clear that our motorsports, although they are back this year, obviously, they don't have the other two cars, but it's clear that even though they're back, they're still financially, sponsorship-wise, the car was blank, completely blank. That's funding-wise, it's still not all the way there. It is still not all the way there for our motorsports. And frankly, spoiler alert, they will have Kyle Weatherman driving the 02 this weekend. I know they might have some new partners over there, but I'm still skeptical if our motorsports will make it the entire Xfinity Series schedule. Still skeptical on that for sure. Some other underdogs. It's kind of been a rough effort for Ryan Ellis and Alpha Prime Racing. Their first couple efforts, both outside the top 30. Ryan's kind of had a tough go in his, it's not a full-time return, but mostly full-time, 28 races this season. Kind of a rough return so far. Timmy Hill in the 66, they were showing top 20 speed early, but just fell off throughout the race. Unfortunately, finished 32nd. And, I'm reading all these finishes. There's really no underdogs, again, in the top 20. This is a track where you just don't see a lot of underdogs, perform well at. Like, looking in the top 20 right now, can you classify Brett Moffitt as an underdog? You can't because, they got, SHR Alliance. Same thing with the 48 car, Parker Kligerman. They got an RCR Alliance. You can't really classify them as backmarkers or underdogs because they're getting Elite Alliance equipment. Joe Grab Jr., he made his debut for Joe Gibbs Racing. I thought he did pretty competent. Ran inside the top 10, finished 11th. I don't know what people are expecting. He still outran Daniel Hemrick. So, what does that tell you? For all the people that crap on Joe Grab Jr., he outran the 2021 Series champion on speed. What does that say about Daniel Hemrick? I'm still not sold on Daniel Hemrick. He got his one fluke win in a championship and has done nothing, and I mean nothing, since. In the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series, nothing. So all the Hemrick fans, I know Hemrick's got a huge fan base for some reason. I don't see where it comes from. And that's just me. I'm just not the biggest Hemrick fan because, what has he done? Nothing. His championship was a fluke. in my opinion. And for all the people that crap on Joe Graf Jr., he outran the champion. So what do you got to say about that? So, yeah, sorry, I went into a little bit of rant there. The first real underdogs you could say were Josh Williams. I mean, shocker, Josh Williams giving a underfunded car a good run. Josh Williams is awesome. We all know that. 16 for him. Anthony Alfredo was 17th, but again, I don't really classify that as an underdog because although he is driving for BJ McLeod Motorsports, the cars that Anthony are driving are actually the exact same cars that he drove at Hour last year. It's actually the exact same team. Pat Tryson, of course, the crew chief. The entire team is exactly the same, just with a 78 instead of a 23. So a 17th place finish is actually what I would expect out of an Anthony Alfredo. That's actually what I was expect to finish out of him. Jeremy Clements, 18th. That's about where he usually runs every week nowadays. I mean, he'll run from about 10th to about 22nd every week. Parker Retzlaff, 20th. Raja Crew, 21st. Like I said, a lot of the underdogs struggled. Even Ross Chastain in a full DGM setup. Ross Chastain could only manage, he was running inside the top 20 at some points, but only 24th. Still cool to see Ross Chastain. You know, it really shows Ross Chastain knows where he came from. Ross Chastain drove some of the worst rides you could drive in NASCAR. And now he's driving for one of the top-tier elite teams in Trackhouse. And I think it is a very respectable move by a guy like him to drive for a team that he knows he doesn't have a chance of winning. He's not going to win with this team at this track. And I would say it's a very, very complimentable thing by Ross to give this team a great run. So shout out to Ross Chastain for giving them a good run. Some people are going after me now in the chat saying, is Brett Moffitt a fluke Chuck champion? Well, he did win 4 or 5 races that year. So, and he won the finale race too, and he didn't have to move anyone. So I don't know what your argument is there, buddy. But yeah, looking at the Xfinity Series owner points heading into Las Vegas, you know, same thing. A lot of these under budget Xfinity teams having trouble scoring points, having trouble getting points on the board. You know, keep in mind, this is the last race. The last race that the 2021. See, my years are still mixed up. 2022 points will still be used. So, yeah, for a lot of these teams, it's good. You know, they're still locked into the race. They have nothing to worry about. But once we get to Phoenix, man, some of these teams who bought points from last year might be starting to get just a little bit nervous because you're all the way up to Phoenix. You don't want to DNQ a race. It's the last thing you want to see. So for a lot of these teams, they're breathing a sigh of relief. You know, they're locked in. But yes, after Las Vegas, we will be reverting to the 2023 series points. And right now, some of the cars to maybe be concerned for will be the 43 of Alpha Prime, the 66 of MBM, the 07 of SS Greenlight, the 4 of JD, and the 91 of DGM. Those are the current lowest 5 cars in the full season owner points that are running the whole season, at least. So for those cars, number one, making the race at Las Vegas is a must, and getting a decent run is also a must for those organizations as they go all the way to Phoenix, where Phoenix qualifying, as we've seen in the past, can be very, very close on time to see who makes it and goes home. It can also be very treacherous because you got to nail all 4 corners. So, yeah. As for the top 30 10K bonus, right now, as we would head into Las Vegas, the cars that are on the bubble for that, the 53 of Emerling Gase is 28th, the 44 of Alpha Prime is 29th, and right now holding 30th is the 08 of SS Greenlight Racing. Now note, this does not dictate who gets the top 30 10K bonus for this year, for this weekend, I mean. It'll dictate the top 30 10K bonus for Phoenix. So for a lot of these teams, the 53, the 44, and the 08, you want to have a good run so that way when you get to Phoenix next week, you can start kicking in that extra 10K bonus, which for a lot of teams like Emerling Gase, like Bobby Dotter's team, 10K goes a long way. And I mean a really, really long way with tires, travel, fuel costs, body parts. It really goes a long way. But yeah, so that's kind of your Fontana review. Let's get right into our Vegas stuff for the week. We have the Truck Series back. Obviously, you guys can see right here in my very nice Coble Enterprises Hill Motorsports shirt that we all wore at Daytona. Only 35 trucks. Kind of a shocker there, I'll be honest with you. Garrett Smithley hates that. Probably still using 20 points. Yeah, I agree with Garrett. Just can't catch a break. But yeah, going back to the Truck Series, only 35 entries. We've seen this a couple of times in the last couple of races with the Truck Series. Heck, last year's finale only had 35 trucks, even with some extra entries that we didn't expect. I don't know if that's a good sign for the Truck Series or not. I do know that some of the Ilmore costs are getting a little ridiculous. But yeah, only 35 trucks are entered, which includes some of the part-time trucks like the 04 of Caden Honeycutt, which only plans to go a couple of races this year as of now. No second G2G entry, and I was kind of shocked by that. I figured if we were going to get a 36th entrant, it would have came from the G2G team running the 47. But nope. Now, this might be a dumb question, and I probably should know the answer to this, but I don't. Is the 36th place money just distributed then through the field, or is it just not paid, and they just pay the top 35? Kind of a dumb question, but if you could answer it in the chat, I'd be appreciated by that. Notables in the Truck Series entry list, Kaz Gralla is driving the 1 for David Gillen's team, so obviously we've already seen some unique drivers in the 1. We got John Hunter Nemechek, who's driving the 17 for Tricon. How ironic that John Hunter Nemechek's driving the exact same truck that he wrecked at IRP last year. Despite rumors that it was a full-time ride, it is not. It is not a full-time ride for Derek Kraus. Matt Mills does return to the 20 for Young's Motorsports. So, looks like those things about Matt Mills not returning to BJ McLeod Motorsports might be true. Which I think in some ways is a good thing. I feel like Matt had kind of run out his tenure there, especially after how bad of a season they had last year together. Max Gutierrez, fantastic to see Max back at the track. I hope, and I think we can all agree, I hope Max is doing okay mentally. I hope he's doing okay physically. I cannot imagine what that poor guy is going through, losing a family member like that, being involved with it like he was. So, I think even though we might not like the team that much because of who's affiliated, Austin Lane Self, I think everybody can agree we're all pulling for the 22 this week. And we know he's not going to win, but we're all pulling for maybe a top 10 finish, top 15, top 10 finish for the 22 truck. I think we can all agree on that. I want the 22 to finish because, man, props for Max to be able to come back this quickly. I feel so bad for him, but at the same time, I'm glad he's coming back. I'm glad he's getting back to work. And like I said, we should all cheer the 22 this weekend. Absolutely. I don't see why anyone should not be cheering the 22 this weekend. The 30 truck of On Point Motorsports, note Larry, was on the entry list, but they have withdrawn. On Point Motorsports, I don't know, man. When they lost Tate Fogelman last year, they did have their still sponsorship from Rangeline, but it's not looking good, man. I was there at Daytona. Their hauler was completely blank, nothing on the car. They had to change the transmission. The truck in general didn't run very well. Chris Hacker didn't do all that well. He's a rookie, so what do you kind of expect at the same time? But I don't know, man. It sucks. Looking at the crew members, they didn't have a lot of crew guys there. So I really hope this isn't the end of On Point Motorsports, but I sadly think that they're going to shut down by the end of the year. If they don't have a sponsor on the hauler, that really says a lot, in my opinion. That really, really does say a lot if they don't have a sponsor on the side of the hauler. Because even some of the lower tier teams still have, some sort of logos, whether it be like associate sponsors. Even if they don't have a primary sponsor, they'll still carry some associate sponsors on the car. But, I mean, this team, they got nothing. It's just completely blank white. So I hope they don't shut down because I like On Point Motorsports. I mean, my favorite time of On Point Motorsports is when Brennan Poole was driving full-time for them. But unfortunately, it looks like the funding has started to dry up. Mason Massey, of course, in the 33. Josh Realm in the 34. Gotta love Josh Realm on Twitter. Basically just making fun of the fact that the truck's unsponsored. There is some news on the 34 truck, which we will get to in a second. Get through the rest of the entry list here. Jake Garcia makes his debut in the 35 truck on a 1.5 mile track. Ross Chastain's back in the 41 truck as it was posted that he would be back. Lawless Allen gets to make a start after DNQing Daytona. Brennan Poole is back with G2G Racing. I know a lot of people, D2G has definitely been in the news as of late as well, but Brennan Poole, and they will be sponsored by South Point Hotel and Casino. I posted the paint scheme on my Twitter last night. Shout out to G2G for letting me post that. And how about that? A great sponsor. I mean, they won't be a problem for tire budget, so they'll have plenty of tires. And if they can just keep that truck, in one decent piece, I mean, there's no reason why Brennan Poole can't give that truck a top 20, top 15 finish easily. So, I know G2G is not everyone's favorite team, but I'm a Brennan Poole fan, so I'm going to cheer for them out of spite because I'm a big Brennan Poole fan, been a big Brennan Poole fan for a long time. And, of course, we got our main man, Timmy, who will be sponsored by Units this weekend. So, obviously, I'm wearing the wrong sponsor shirt, but I don't have a Units shirt. I think that's the only one I'm missing out of the Timmy collection is a Units shirt. So, hopefully, I'll see that shirt eventually, but I don't know. It all depends on if Timmy gives me one. But yeah, so going back to the 34 truck, it was announced that they will be selling their owner points to the 46 truck. Obviously, the 46 failed to qualify at Daytona, and the 34 did make the race. The 34 will also run this weekend, and it's unshockingly, if they don't have the funding, I like the idea of cutting back to just the 33 truck because if you don't have the money for the 34 truck, don't just run it out of spite. We're in an era of racing where you can no longer bring a vehicle to the racetrack and just run it without sponsorship. You're going to screw yourself if you try that, unfortunately. If you're trying to run full-time without any sponsorship, it's just not going to work. Or if you do, you're going to run like crap. Pretty much it's the harsh reality of today's racing without sponsorship. You're either going to run like crap or you're just going to run part-time. And nobody wants to see that at all, but unfortunately that's just how it goes in today's day and age. But yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. So the 34 team, I could see them back for some part-time efforts, but I can see why. And again, you ask yourself, well, why would they sell to G2G Racing? They were having a working relationship at Daytona. So the move actually makes a lot of sense. It allows G2G to make races. It gives Rayom some extra money. And it allows them to focus on the 33 truck, which really they should be, considering that truck has now one primary driver and some pretty good funding behind it. And I think Mason Massey can actually do fairly well if they just put the time and effort, all the time and effort into that specific truck. In terms of the backmarkers, like I said, Vegas always seems to be one of the better truck races. No doubt in my mind that guys like Timmy, guys like Brennan, guys like him, Timmy and Brennan, Gutierrez can all run inside the top 20, top 15. Same with Colby Howard. Same with Caden Honeycutt. I think some of the underdogs and the backmarkers of the truck series will actually really show some good runs this weekend in the truck race. Actually, this weekend, tomorrow. I think they'll actually show some good runs. Especially with not having to worry about qualifying, kind of like that for those organizations as well. Their 2022 owner points, of course, don't kick in till race 3. And, of course, their race 3 is not for a while. So they, for the teams for 2022, still locked in, still safe for quite a while. And they won't be until, race 4? Is that Atlanta? I'm not sure. What's race number 4? If anyone could help me out in the chat. But, yeah, so that's the truck race. Again, it's tomorrow. Got your all favorite drivers. If you guys want to, I'm not really a fan of the big teams as much, but if you guys want me to get a pick, I'm going to go with John Hunter. I'll go with John Hunter just because he's kind of on a hot streak right now with the Xfinity program. He's still in top tier equipment. Tricon is still top tier, one of the top tier truck teams. So I'm going to go with John Hunter. I'm not going to pick, surprisingly, I'm not picking Kyle Busch because, even though Kyle Busch is also on hot streak, will Kyle Busch perform any different because he's in a Chevrolet? That's going to be a big question, in my opinion, as well. Will Kyle Busch's team perform any better at in a Chevrolet? It's actually going to be a pretty interesting thing to watch. But my pick is still going to be John Hunter. But John Hunter Nemechek versus Kyle Busch, we're in for a good battle. We're in for a good battle on Friday. On Saturday, it looks like we'll get to have qualifying. Like I said, qualifying looks good. Same 40 cars as was at Fontana. Just a couple of driver changes. Kyle Weatherman, like we said, will be in the 02, again, unsponsored. I don't see Our Motorsports making it through the year right now. I know David Starr is running some select races for them, but he ain't full-time. So if you take out the races that he wasn't going to run, I know they might have some partnership help with Larry's Lemonade, but I just don't know, man. Colin will be in the 02. Yeah, and other than that, we got Mason Maggio or Maggio. Never can quite get his name right. He'll be in the 66 for Carl Long. That entry is a little concerning just because of where MBM is at in the points, and we know Garrett is a great qualifier. The 74 CHK, they are also they finally got some sponsorship as well. And Josh Bilicki will be driving the 91 over Ross Chastain. And that's really the only changes. Right now, the two cars that absolutely, again, have to make the show on time, no provisionals, no nothing, are the 99 and the 74. I do think the 99 will be just fine. The 99, we saw Garrett, I think he qualified, 25th last year? And that was a last-minute deal. So now with time to prep, time to get the car ready, and it's more fresher than a lot of the other cars because it didn't race, I think the 99 will be just fine. The 74, I'm going to say the 74 is going to come close, but I love Ryan Vargas, I do, but I think the other teams are just too competitive, and I think they're going to lose out by just a little bit. I don't see the 74 making it. That's an honest answer. Nothing against Ryan Vargas. I just think it's the equipment. It's just not good enough. So 74 is my pick. And I am a little concerned for the Mason. He was fast at the Charlotte test, but, he's not been to this track. Going up against a lot of heavy hitters and a car he hasn't been in before. It was not the same car that even drove in the Charlotte test. He drove a Toyota in the test. This is a Ford. And they got no points really to fall back on. So, unfortunately, it could be like MBM's going home. I'm not going to say he is. I'm going to say the 74 is going home, but I'm not going to pick a second one because I think the second DNQ could be wide open between, like the 91, the 66. I would say would be the only other two cars that could possibly end up missing this race. Backmarkers, I would say to watch out for, of course. This is a track where, some of those guys can perform. Kyle Weatherman, I think Kyle Weatherman will do a lot better. Gray Galding, let's see here, who else? Jeffrey Earnhardt. I think Jeffrey, he's kind of had a rough start to the season. I think they'll put together a good run. And as well as Anthony Alfredo. So Vegas did give us quite a few good backmarker runs the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in qualifying. But it's going to be hot. It's going to be slick. You got to nail that setup, man, because Las Vegas qualifying, Las Vegas qualifying can be very treacherous. That's for sure. 91 car will be Josh Bilecki in the chat. So yeah, so that'll be the Xfinity race, the only race of the weekend that will have DNQs. And, really not much to say for the Cup race. It's the same 36 guys that were last week. Is that the first time in history that 2 straight entry lists have looked exactly the same with exactly the same drivers? Is that possible? And if we have that at Phoenix, would it be the first time in NASCAR history that 3 races in a row would have the exact same 3 driver lineups? Never knew that. That's possible. There is some news, though, to still talk about in the Cup Series. It was announced today, Todd Gilliland, despite the issues with missing his 6 races, has now found those 6 races. It was reported about a week ago, he did find his 5 races with 5 of the 6 races with the Rick Ware 15 car. And today it was announced that they will run the 36. They found the sponsorship, and they will run an open entry for Todd at Talladega. So Todd is still playoff eligible. And I can definitely say this, when it comes to him driving the 15 car, there's going to be a lot of willpower in him to outrun that 38. That is for sure. And that actually, the races that he actually does run the 15, I'm going to pay close attention to that because I guarantee you it's not going to be about winning the race because obviously he knows he won't. For him, those races he's running the 15 in, that's going to be all about Todd wanting to beat that 38 car and just low-key kind of stick it to FRM, And everyone's asking, well, why don't you just put Zane in the 36 for Talladega? Because the sponsors want Zane in the 38. That's how this business works. Does it suck? Yep. But that's just the nature of the business, folks. And I feel bad for Zane Smith at the same time because Zane's a good guy. Zane's a good guy, good driver. And sometimes you just get yourself into the situations where you've done literally nothing wrong, but yet everybody hates you. I feel for Zane Smith because he's done nothing wrong in this situation. He's just, you can say right place, right time, and some people don't like that. I think he's ready. People forget Zane Smith's been in ARCA, he's been in trucks, he's been in Xfinity. The guy is more than ready to go to Cup next year. Absolutely more than ready. Will he do anything in that car? I don't know. The 38 car has always been kind of the lesser entry of the 2 FRM entries, so I think Zane deserves a lot better than the 38 car. No disrespect to Front Row Motorsports, but I just feel Zane deserves better because if he gets in that 38 car, he's just going to run 25th every week with maybe a top 20 finish from time to time. And that's why you saw John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek had the chance to stay in the 38 for 2021. He didn't take it. He went down to the Truck Series, and look what he's done for himself now. I don't want to see that same thing happen to Zane Smith, but at the same time, I very easily could see it happen to Zane Smith, where, he runs a 38, not having the best run, and wants to go back down to the lower divisions and prove himself. So, but again, of course, the top 33 charter battle, just really curious to see what they do this weekend. Hope the 51 can find more speed. The 15, I hope they can continue that great speed. I hope the 78 can continue that great speed. And God, I hope the 77 can find some speed. Because, Jesus, it's just embarrassing at this point. With how slow they are. God, all the people that make fun of the Dillons. And I love Ty. And at the same time, Ty's not a bad guy. Ty Dillon is not a bad guy. He's not. He's one of the nicest guys you'll meet in the garage. He's always down for an autograph. He's always down for a picture. I've rarely seen times where Ty Dillon is a dick in the garage. I've rarely seen that. He's always been a nice, chill guy. But no matter how nice and how cool you are behind the scenes, if you can't get it done on track, you just can't get it done on track. It's that simple. And this guy's been given so many chances. You just got to wonder when they're going to dry up. At this point, I feel like Ty should pull a John Hunter, go back down to the Truck Series, go back down to the Xfinity Series, and let's see what you can really do. But yes, I can agree he might have a little bit of a better personality than Austin. Austin, I feel like, has matured a little bit more the older he's gotten as well. Maybe the reality show didn't help as much, but yeah. But in my honest opinion, I think of everyone says like, oh, Rick Ware needs to sell a charter. Oh, BJ needs to sell his charter. First off, BJ doesn't own the charter. Joe Falk does. This is a partnership effort, but Joe Falk owns the charter. So it's not BJ's call. It's Joe Falk's call. But if anything, I feel like Spire really needs to actually sell that 77 charter. Take the money and just put it into that 7 team or put it into another truck team, because it's clear. I mean, you could say it's only been 2 races, but I look at, again, the last 2 years. 2021, it went in the Gen 6 car. The 77 had a great driver in Justin Haley. It did nothing. 2022 with Bilicki, Castle, even guys like Bilicki and Castle, who are pretty decent, underrated drivers, did nothing in the car. Absolutely nothing outside of Landon's top 5 finish at Daytona, which was only due to the field crashing out. I mean, so I really hope Rick Ware Racing did not swap points, because if that 15 car is still eligible for the top 33 charter, right now they are on par and in the top 33, and they're doing exactly what they're doing. But if the 51 is taking over the 15's points, well, I would say right now that's not looking like the best decision. But it's only race 3 of the season, and it's just going to be really interesting, that's for sure, to see what these teams can do. But it's clear, people don't want the backmarker teams in the Cup Series anymore. Can understand it from a point, but I think I can counterpoint and say racing needs its backmarkers, whether you like them or not. Backmarkers do belong in racing; they deserve to be in racing, and I don't like seeing people cut them out of racing. That is for sure. So, yeah, I think Vegas is going to provide us with some great racing as usual. All the next gen Las Vegas races, all the Xfinity Las Vegas races, all the truck Las Vegas races have provided us with great racing. So, yes, in the chat, I do believe we will see, you talk about how different the 2023 Cup Series looks. I think the 2024 Cup Series will be the most changed it's ever been. I think we're going to see a lot of charter changes at the end of this year, between maybe Rick Ware, between maybe Spire. Just will be interesting to see. It will be definitely interesting to see for sure how these teams will do with these charters. But I will be genuinely shocked if the 77 hangs on to their charter after this year. And it's not like, I mean, they finished inside the top 33 last year. So they're not even in danger of losing it. They're not even close to being in danger of losing it. But I feel like at this point, it's just holding the team back. That's all it's doing. I feel like if they were to get rid of it, it would actually benefit the organization. Ugh, boy, that was a fun show. So, yeah, I can agree. They probably should have sold the 77 after last year, but since they already had Ty locked in, I mean, they had Ty announced for that car, month before the season even ended. So there might have been talks about getting rid of the 77 charter. We don't know, but because the driver deal was already announced, well, I'm going to take the money and let's keep going with it. But now they just got to finish the dang races. I mean, 2 straight engine failures. Doesn't really make me too excited for this weekend at Vegas, which is another track that's really rough on the motors with how much speed they're putting out. So, yeah, boy. So Vegas is going to be fun, guys. Obviously, live tweet with the account. We'll be trying to keep up as much as possible with Backmarker content. And Junior Motorsports is not going to Cup. Just going to say that right now. It is not going to happen. With the way these charter prices are and Junior's Cup team falling down, or Junior's Xfinity team potentially falling because of it, Junior will not be in Cup. Yes, don't forget about the 80 car. Eventually, that Rayom car that might debut at Phoenix. So, yeah, that's an open car we could see as well. But anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of your hairs. I thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Backmarker Battles. Sorry there was no ARCA podcast, but because there's no ARCA race, there's not one to cover. But we will be back next week with the ARCA Racing podcast. Been trying out some new names. Don't know what we're going to do for a new name, but I kind of want to change it up, freshen it up a little bit. Not that the ARCA Racing podcast is a bad name, but, maybe give it some more creativity. I don't know. We'll see what we come up with. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Again, we're at 974 subs. Let's get to that magic number 1,000. I want to get this channel up there. Thanks again for your continued support. Thanks again for your continued support. I really appreciate it, guys. And remember, we're having 5 prizes giveaway from my personal collection. 5 cars from my personal collection will be up for grabs. So yeah, all you have to do is like and subscribe, and you're entered. That's all you guys literally have to do. So yeah, I will catch you guys next week with the ARCA Racing Podcast preview show, and of course the Backmarker Battles review and preview show from Las Vegas to Phoenix. I'm Colby Evans, starting Park Car, signing off for the night, and we will catch you all real soon. So long, guys.